The war room was silent except for the soft hum of holographic displays. Admiral Chen stood at the head of the table, watching the faces of commanders from 12 different species. None of them looked hopeful. "They will reach Theranos Gate in 72 hours, said Commander Velk, his forearms crossed over his chest. The reptilian officer's scales had turned a dull gray, which Chen had learned meant fear. "Our intelligence says they bring 500 warships. We have 93. Chen looked at the star map floating above the table. Red dots marked the Krell Dominion fleet, a massive swarm moving toward the thin blue line that represented the Coalition defense. Beyond that line were the core worlds. Billions of lives. If Theranos Gate fell, nothing would stop the Krell from reaching Earth, Belkar Prime, Torgath, and 50 other populated systems. We hold the gate, Chen said quietly. That's all there is to it. A Torgathi commander, her voice like grinding stones, spoke up. With respect, Admiral, mathematics does not care about courage. They outnumber us 5-1. Their ships are newer. Our supply lines are stretched. We should consider evacuation protocols. Chen felt tired. Not from lack of sleep, though he had barely rested in weeks. It was the weight of command, the knowledge that his decisions would determine whether entire civilizations lived or died. Humanity had joined the Galactic Coalition only 30 years ago. The older species still saw humans as newcomers, brave but inexperienced in the ways of galactic warfare. There's an old human naval tradition, Chen began. Several alien officers turned their attention to him. Humans were known for their strange customs. When things looked darkest, sailors would tell stories of ghost ships, phantom vessels that appeared when they were needed most, crewed by the spirits of fallen sailors who refused to abandon their duty. The Velkari ambassador made a sound that Chen's translator interpreted as polite skepticism. A pleasant myth, Admiral. But we need ships of metal and crews of flesh, not stories. Chen nodded slowly. He had expected that response. But the story was not just a myth to humans who served in the Deep Space Fleet. Every human spacer knew the tale of the UHSV Revenant. 50 years ago, when humanity was still learning to navigate beyond its own solar system, the Revenant had been Earth's pride. She was the first true human warship designed for deep space combat. Her captain, Sarah Volkov, was a legend even before the ship vanished. Volkov had fought in Earth's unification wars, had led the first successful defense against pirates in the asteroid belt, and had personally trained half the officers in the early human space fleet. The Revenant had been sent on a classified mission beyond the outer veil, a region of space where scanners went strange and jump drives sometimes failed. The mission parameters were never made public. Officially, the ship was conducting long-range reconnaissance and mapping gravitational anomalies. Chen had always suspected there was more to it than that. The crew roster had included scientists who specialized in ancient alien technology and xenoarchaeology. The ship never returned. After 6 months of silence, the Revenant was declared lost with all hands. 247 souls gone into the dark. Captain Volkov's name was engraved on the memorial wall at Luna Station, along with every member of her crew, but spacers talked. In quiet moments between jumps and bars on frontier stations, human crews would share stories. Some claimed they had seen the Revenant on long-range sensors, only to have it vanish when they approached. Others spoke of distress calls in Volkov's voice, warning them away from dangerous regions of space. The stories grew over the decades, becoming part of human spacer culture. The phantom ship that never stopped fighting. The captain who refused to abandon her post even in death. Chen shook his head, clearing the memories. Ghost stories would not save them. He needed real ships and real strategies. "We will fortify our position at the gate," he said, his voice firm. "Every ship we have will be equipped with maximum ordnance. The Velkari will hold the center with their shield ships. Torgathi wings will protect our flanks. Human forces will provide long-range missile support and rapid response. We drill the coordination for the next 48 hours. Dismissed." The officers filed out, leaving Chen alone with the holographic display. He stared at the red dots crawling toward them like a swarm of locusts. 500 ships. He ran the simulations in his mind, playing out dozens of tactical scenarios. In every one, the Coalition lost. At best, they could bloody the Krell nose badly enough to slow their advance by a few weeks. At worst, they would be wiped out in the first hour. His communicator chirped. "Admiral, the fleet captains are requesting a morale address before we move to battle positions." Chen closed his eyes for a moment, then straightened his uniform. "Prepare a fleet-wide transmission." I'll speak in 10 minutes. He walked to the observation deck of his flagship, the Indomitable. Through the reinforced windows, he could see dozens of ships from different species all gathering for what might be their final battle. The vessels were beautiful in their own ways. Velkari ships were smooth and crystalline. Torgathi warships were angular and brutal. And the human vessels, newer and less elegant than the others, bristled with weapons platforms and armor plates. When the transmission light activated, Chen spoke without notes. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. In 3 days we will face an enemy that believes we are weak. They think that because we are different species from different worlds, we cannot stand together. They are wrong. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I won't lie to you. The odds are not in our favor. Many of us will not survive this battle. But I look out at this fleet, and I see something the Krell do not understand. I see courage. I see honor. I see beings who chose to stand and fight rather than run and hide. There is a human saying, Chen continued. Legends never die. They might fade for a while, disappear from view, but when they are needed most, they return. Every species here has its own legends, stories of heroes who refused to quit, who fought impossible battles, who did what needed to be done no matter the cost. Today we become those legends. Today, we show the galaxy what it means to stand together. The fleet began moving into formation, each ship taking its assigned position at Theranos Gate. Chen watched them go, his heart heavy but his resolve firm. He thought of Captain Volkov and the Revenant, of all the legends humanity carried into the stars. If only legends could be real, he thought. If only ghost ships could save them. In the darkness of deep space, sensors detected the approaching Krell armada. 3 days until contact. 3 days until the battle that would determine the fate of billions. Chen returned to the war room to finalize tactical plans. He did not know that in the quantum foam of folded space, something old and scarred was already moving. Something that had been fighting for 50 years, waiting for this exact moment. The Krell were coming. But they were not the only ones. The Krell armada arrived exactly on schedule. Chen watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as 500 enemy warships emerged from jump space. The sight was terrifying. Each Krell vessel was massive, dark metal covered with weapon ports and armor plating. They moved in perfect formation like a single predator stalking its prey. All ships, battle stations, Chen ordered. His voice was calm despite the fear he felt. Hold formation. Wait for my command. The coalition fleet looked small compared to the Krell swarm. 93 ships against 500. But every commander knew their job. The Velkari shield ships formed the center, their energy barriers already glowing with power. Torgathi fighters spread out on the flanks, ready to dive and strike. Human cruisers hung back, their missile tubes loaded and targeting systems locked. The Krell commander sent a transmission. The holographic image showed a creature that looked like an insect mixed with a shark. Its voice was cold and clicking. Coalition forces. You cannot win. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make examples of your worlds. Chen did not bother responding. He raised his hand, then dropped it. All ships engage. Space erupted in fire and light. Thousands of missiles streaked across the darkness, leaving trails of blue exhaust. Velkari energy beams lanced out, striking Krell shields with thunderous impacts. Torgathi fighters swarmed forward, their pilots screaming battle cries in their ancient language. The Krell returned fire with devastating efficiency. Their weapons were powerful, designed to punch through heavy armor. Within the first minute, 2 coalition ships exploded, their reactors breached. A Torgathi carrier took a direct hit to its engines and began spinning out of control. Concentrate fire on their command ships, Chen ordered. Break their coordination. Human missiles found their targets. 3 Krell cruisers vanished in expanding spheres of plasma, but for every enemy ship destroyed, the coalition lost 2 of its own. The mathematics of the battle were simple and brutal. They were being ground down. Lieutenant Morrison, Chen's tactical officer, called out damage reports in a steady voice. Velkari shield ship crystalline down. Torgathi destroyer wings of fire evacuating. Our own shield strength at 70%. Chen watched the tactical display with growing dread. Red indicators showed coalition ships dying. The Krell were pushing forward, using their superior numbers to simply overwhelm the defensive line. A group of enemy battleships focused fire on one of the Velkari capital ships. The alien vessel's shields flared, held for a moment, then collapsed. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull. Admiral, they're breaking through on the left flank, Morrison reported. Chen immediately redirected forces. All human cruisers shift to Sector 7. Torgathi wings fall back and regroup. Felkari, extend your shield coverage. The Coalition fleet scrambled to plug the gap, but it was like trying to hold back an ocean with your hands. More ships died. The Indomitable shuddered as enemy fire struck its armor. Lights flickered on the bridge. Hull breach on Deck 9, someone called out. Damage control teams responding. Chen gripped the arms of his command chair. They had practiced this battle 100 times in simulations. They knew the Krell tactics, knew how to maximize their limited resources, but knowing how to fight did not change the raw numbers. The enemy simply had too many ships. A Torgathi commander's voice crackled over the comm. Admiral Chen, my ships cannot hold. We have lost half our fighters. Requesting permission to make final strike. The Torgathi way of war. When defeat was certain, they turned their ships into weapons, ramming enemy vessels at full speed. It was honorable by their customs, but it meant losing good crews. Denied, Chen said firmly. Fall back to the second defensive line. We're not done yet. But they were. Chen could see it in the tactical display. The Krell had lost perhaps 50 ships. The Coalition was down to 60 vessels, most damaged. At this rate, they would be wiped out within 2 hours. A human ensign at the sensor station spoke up, her voice uncertain. Sir, I'm getting a strange reading. Something is coming out of jump space, but the signature is wrong. Define wrong, Chen said, not taking his eyes off the battle display. It's old, sir. Really old. And it's human. Morrison checked his own screens. She's right, Admiral. I'm reading a warp signature from a 50-year-old drive system. But that's impossible. Nothing that old could still function. Chen felt a chill run down his spine. Get me a visual. The main screen shifted. In the empty space behind the Coalition fleet, reality seemed to tear open. Not a normal jump point, but something stranger. The fabric of space twisted and rippled like water. And through that impossible rift, a ship emerged. Chen recognized the silhouette immediately. Every human spacer would. The UHSV Revenant. But this was not the ship from the history books. The Revenant's hull was scarred with 50 years of battle damage. Armor plates had been replaced with materials Chen did not recognize. Strange energy fields flickered around its edges, making it seem partially transparent. The ship looked like it was only half in normal space, phasing in and out of reality. The bridge crew stared in silence. Morrison whispered, "That's not possible." The Revenant was lost 50 years ago. A transmission crackled through the comm systems. The voice was older than Chen remembered from the historical recordings, worn by years and hardship, but unmistakable. Coalition Fleet, this is Captain Sarah Volkov of the UHSV Revenant, requesting permission to engage the enemy. Chen could not find words. Around him, the bridge crew sat frozen, staring at the impossible ship on their screens. One of the human officers began to cry. The Revenant did not wait for permission. It accelerated toward the Krell fleet at speeds that should have torn apart a ship of its age. Energy weapons fired from ports that had never existed in the original design. The beams were different colors, technologies Chen had never seen. They struck Krell shields and simply passed through, as if the barriers were not there. 3 Krell cruisers exploded in rapid succession. The Revenant moved through their formation like a knife through water, dodging return fire with impossible precision. The ship seemed to know where enemy weapons would aim before they fired. It phased partially out of existence to let missiles pass harmlessly through its hull, then solidified to deliver devastating return fire. Chen found his voice. All ships coordinate with the Revenant. Follow her attack pattern. The Coalition fleet, stunned but not broken, rallied. New hope surged through the ranks. The phantom ship they had thought was just a legend was real, and it was fighting for them. The Krell, for the first time in the battle, hesitated. Their formations wavered. Chen could see the confusion in their movements. The Krell feared nothing, but this ship that appeared from nowhere, that fought with tactics they had never seen, made them pause. Captain Volkov's voice came through again. All ships form up on my position. I'm transmitting tactical data. Follow my lead. Chen watched as information flooded into the Indomitable's combat systems, battle plans, enemy weaknesses, attack vectors. It was like Volkov had fought the Krell 1,000 times before and knew every move they would make. Morrison, Chen said, his voice filled with wonder, execute those attack patterns. All ships follow the Revenant. The Coalition fleet moved forward with renewed energy. They were still outnumbered. They were still damaged. But now they had something they had not had before. They had their legend, and she had come home to fight. The battle changed in an instant. The Revenant carved through the Krell formation like it was made of paper. Coalition ships followed the Phantom vessel's lead, executing the attack patterns that Volkov had transmitted. The patterns were unlike anything in standard tactical doctrine. They were aggressive, precise, and devastatingly effective. Chen watched in amazement as the Revenant phased partially out of reality to dodge a salvo of missiles, then solidified just long enough to fire a concentrated beam that cut a Krell battleship in half. The Phantom ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once, flickering between positions faster than sensors could track. How is that possible? Morrison breathed. Those maneuvers would kill the crew from acceleration alone. I don't know, Chen admitted. But right now I don't care. All ships maintain formation with the Revenant. The Valkyrie shield ships moved forward, their energy barriers protecting the advancing fleet. Torgathi fighters dove and struck with renewed courage. Human cruisers poured missile fire into gaps that the Revenant created in the enemy formation. For the first time since the battle began, the Krell were losing ground. A Krell destroyer attempted to flank the Revenant. The Phantom ship seemed to sense it before it happened, spinning in place and unleashing weapons from ports that appeared and disappeared. The enemy vessel exploded, its reactor breached. Chen opened a direct channel. Captain Volkov, this is Admiral Chen. Your timing is remarkable, but I need to know what we're dealing with. What happened to your ship? There was a pause. When Volkov's voice came back, it sounded tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. Admiral, that's a long story. Right now, focus on the battle. We need to destroy their command ship. I'm transmitting its location. A new marker appeared on Chen's tactical display. Deep in the Krell formation was a vessel twice the size of any other. The flagship. If they could take it down, the enemy fleet would lose coordination. That's too far, Morrison said. We'd never fight through their lines to reach it. We don't have to fight through, Chen said, understanding dawning. Revenant, can you create an opening? Already on it, Volkov replied. The Phantom ship accelerated toward the Krell flagship at impossible speed. Energy fields flickered around its hull, reality bending in its wake. Krell ships tried to intercept, but the Revenant phased through them, leaving confusion in its path. When it reached the flagship, it did something that made Chen's eyes hurt to watch. The ship seemed to split into multiple versions of itself, each one firing from a different angle. The Krell flagship's shields collapsed under the coordinated assault. Its hull cracked open like an egg. All ships full assault on that position, Chen ordered. End this now. The coalition fleet surged forward. With the Revenant creating chaos in their ranks and their flagship dying, the Krell formation broke apart. Individual captains made their own decisions, some trying to retreat, others fighting to the last. The disciplined swarm became a confused mob. Valkyrie energy beams found their marks. Torgathi fighters swarmed damaged vessels. Human missiles struck engines and weapon systems with precision. The tide of battle had completely reversed. But Chen could see that something was wrong with the Revenant. The ship's phasing was becoming more erratic. Sometimes it disappeared completely for several seconds before reappearing. Strange lights flickered along its hull, colors that should not exist in normal space. Captain Volkov, your ship appears to be experiencing difficulties, Chen transmitted. We can't hold this state much longer, Volkov replied. Her voice was strained. The dimensional stress is too high. We have maybe 30 minutes before we have to phase out completely. Then let's make them count, Chen said. The Revenant led one final charge through the Krell formation. The Phantom ship targeted command vessels, communication relays, and supply ships. Every shot counted, every maneuver planned with perfect precision. The coalition fleet followed, pressing their advantage. A massive Krell battleship, one of the largest in their fleet, turned its full arsenal on the Revenant. The Phantom ship could not dodge all the fire. Several impacts struck its hull, and for a moment it seemed to solidify completely, locked in normal space. Revenant taking damage, Morrison reported. Their phase drive is destabilizing. Chen saw the danger. If the Revenant became stuck in normal space, the Krell would tear it apart. All ships protect the Revenant. Give her time to recover. Human cruisers moved to intercept, placing themselves between the Phantom ship and the Krell battleship. Valkyrie shields extended to cover the battered vessel. Torgathi fighters swarmed the enemy battleship, drawing its fire. The distraction worked. The Revenant's hull began to flicker again, phasing back into its protected state, but not before Chen caught a glimpse of its true condition. The ship was held together by makeshift repairs, alien technology grafted onto human engineering, and what looked like pure willpower. Crew members moved in the corridors behind damaged bulkheads. They looked almost transparent, like ghosts themselves. "Thank you, Admiral," Volkov transmitted. "We're back online. Finishing this." The Revenant and the Krell battleship faced each other. Both ships opened fire at the same moment. The Phantom vessel took hits but did not slow. Its weapons, strange and powerful, punched through the battleship's armor. The Krell vessel exploded in a bloom of fire that lit up the battlefield. The remaining Krell ships broke and ran. They had lost their flagship, their command structure, and over 200 vessels. The survivors jumped away into deep space, fleeing for their lives. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the crackle of cooling metal and the hum of damaged systems. The Coalition had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. Chen slumped in his command chair, exhausted. Around him, the bridge crew began to cheer. Similar celebrations erupted across the fleet. Velkari, Torgathi, and human voices mixed in a chorus of relief and joy. But Chen's attention was fixed on the Revenant. The Phantom ship hung in space, its hull flickering more rapidly now. He could see it was struggling to maintain its presence in normal reality. "Captain Volkov," Chen said quietly, "can you come aboard? Your ship needs repairs, and there are a lot of questions that need answers." Another pause. When Volkov spoke, her voice was sad. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Admiral. We're not exactly in sync with this timeline anymore. The technology that brought us here, that kept us fighting, it changed us. We exist between dimensions now, partially here, partially somewhere else." "I don't understand," Chen said. "We found something beyond the outer veil 50 years ago," Volkov explained. "An ancient installation built by a species that died out millions of years ago. They had been fighting the Krell too, or something like them. They left behind technology and a warning. We learned to use their systems, learned to move through time differently. For you, 50 years passed. For us, it's been about 5 months of subjective time." Morrison leaned forward. "But you aged. Your voice sounds older." "Fighting across timelines takes its toll," Volkov said simply. "We fought this battle in a dozen different realities, learning from each one, waiting for the moment when we could make a difference. This timeline, this moment, this is where we were needed most." Chen felt a chill. "You've been fighting for us all along." "Someone had to," Volkov replied. "The Krell are more dangerous than anyone knows, but now you have the data we collected. You know their weaknesses. You can beat them." The Revenant began to fade, its hull becoming more transparent. The ship that had saved them was leaving, pulled back into whatever strange dimension it now called home. "Will we see you again?" Chen asked. "When you need us," Volkov said. Her voice was fading too. "We'll always be out there watching, fighting the battles no one else can fight. That's our duty now." The Phantom ship vanished, leaving only empty space where it had been. Chen stared at the spot for a long time. Finally, he stood and faced his crew, logged the Revenant's actions in today's battle. Every detail. "Future generations need to know what happened here." "Sir," Morrison said softly. "They're going to think we're crazy." Chen smiled. "Maybe, but we have sensor logs from every ship in the fleet. And more importantly, we're alive because of them. That's all the proof I need." 3 hours after the battle ended, Chen stood in the medical bay of the Indomitable. Wounded crew members filled the beds, receiving treatment from overworked doctors and medical robots. The casualties were heavy, but nowhere near as bad as they would have been without the Revenant's intervention. A Torgathi pilot with a bandaged head grabbed Chen's arm as he passed. "Admiral, I saw it. The ghost ship. My grandmother told me stories of human legends, but I never believed them. Now I do." Chen nodded and moved on. Similar conversations were happening across the fleet. The legend had become real, and it had changed something fundamental in how the Coalition species viewed humanity. Humans were no longer just the newcomers. They were the species whose dead came back to fight. He returned to his ready room and found a message waiting. Priority 1, encrypted with codes that were 50 years old. Chen's hand shook slightly as he opened it. Captain Volkov's face appeared on the screen. She looked older than in the historical recordings, her hair gray, her face lined with care, but her eyes were still sharp and determined. "Admiral Chen," the recording began, I'm sending this on a delay just before we phase out. You deserve to know the full truth about what happened to us and why we could help you today." Volkov leaned back in her chair. Behind her, Chen could see the Revenant's bridge. It looked strange, with human controls mixed with alien technology that glowed with impossible colors. 50 years ago, we were sent to investigate reports of ancient ruins beyond the outer veil. What we found changed everything. The installation belonged to a species called the Architects. They existed millions of years ago and fought a war against an enemy that sounds a lot like the Krell. Aggressive, expansionist, consuming everything in their path. The Architects lost their war, Volkov continued. But before they died, they built a final weapon. Not a bomb or a fleet, but a facility that could manipulate time itself. They left it behind as a gift or maybe a warning for whoever came next. Chen listened, fascinated and horrified. When we entered the facility, it activated. We were pulled into a time dilation field. For the outside world, years passed. For us, only days. But that wasn't all. The Architect's AI, still functioning after millions of years, showed us what was coming. It showed us the Krell's future campaigns, their strategies, their weapons. It showed us this battle, the one at Theranos Gate. Volkov's expression grew somber. The AI told us we had a choice. We could leave, return home, and warn everyone. But by the time we got back, it might be too late. Or we could stay and learn to use the Architect's technology, learn to fight across time itself. We voted, she said. All 247 of us, unanimous, we would stay and train. We would become the weapon that could stop the Krell when they were most dangerous. Chen paused the recording, needing a moment to process. The Revenant's crew had chosen to sacrifice everything, to become living ghosts, for a battle that was decades in their future. He resumed the playback. The training was brutal, Volkov said. The Architect's technology requires synchronization at a level humans weren't designed for. We had to link our minds, share our thoughts and reactions. We're not really individuals anymore, Admiral. We're a crew consciousness, all of us thinking and acting as one. That explained the perfect coordination Chen had witnessed during the battle. The phase drive, Volkov continued. It keeps us partially outside normal space. We exist in multiple timelines simultaneously, which is how we can predict enemy movements. We've already seen them happen in other realities. But the technology is dangerous. The more we use it, the less connected we become to any single timeline. We're fading, slowly but surely. We've fought the Krell hundreds of times, she said, in different timelines, different realities. Most of those battles we lost, but each loss taught us something. Each failure showed us a better way. This timeline, the one you're in right now, this is the one where everything came together perfectly. This is the one we could save. Volkov reached out and touched something off screen. I'm transmitting everything we learned to your systems. Krell tactics, their command structures, their biological weaknesses, their supply chains. You'll find detailed files on their most dangerous weapons and how to counter them. This data cost us 50 years of fighting to gather. Use it well. Her expression softened. I should mention something personal. The Architect showed us our own timelines too. Let me tell you about someone on your ship, Admiral. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen, your tactical officer's grandfather. He served on the Revenant as a navigation specialist. He's 22 years old in our timeline, though for you, he died before you were born. Chen felt his heart stop. His grandfather Marcus had been listed as crew on the Revenant. Chen had grown up hearing stories about him from his grandmother, who never remarried after Marcus was declared lost. Marcus wants you to know he's proud of you, Volkov said gently. He's been watching the battle through our shared consciousness. He says his grandson became the officer he always hoped to be. Chen found himself blinking back tears. His grandfather was alive in some strange way, fighting across time itself. We can't come back, Volkov said. The dimensional stress is too much. If we tried to stay in normal space for more than a few hours, the ship would tear apart and take us with it. But we're not done fighting. The Krell are just one threat. The Architects showed us what else is coming. Things that sleep in the dark between stars. We'll be out there fighting them before they reach civilized space. She stood, her image flickering slightly. Tell our families we didn't abandon them. Tell Earth that the Revenant is still on duty, and tell the Coalition that humanity keeps its promises, even across time, even beyond death. The recording ended. Chen sat in silence, processing everything he had heard. After a long moment, he called for Lieutenant Morrison. The tactical officer arrived quickly. Sir, I need you to compile all the data that Volkov sent us, Chen said. Organize it into a database that every coalition ship can access. This information wins the war. Yes, sir, Morrison said, then hesitated. Admiral, there's something else. We ran analysis on the Revenant's crew manifest, cross-referenced with our own personnel files. Chen had a feeling. He knew what was coming. 18 current serving. Coalition officers have grandparents or great-grandparents who were listed as crew on the Revenant, Morrison said quietly, including myself. My great-grandmother was their chief engineer. The scope of it hit Chen like a physical blow. The Revenant wasn't just fighting for humanity or the Coalition. They were fighting for their own descendants, for the future they would never get to live in themselves. Make sure that information stays classified for now, Chen said. The crew members with relatives on the Revenant deserve to know, but this needs to be handled carefully. Understood, sir. After Morrison left, Chen accessed the data Volkov had sent. It was massive, thousands of files covering Krell biology, tactics, weapons, and weaknesses. But one file caught his attention. It was labeled for future reference and was much smaller than the others. He opened it and found a simple text message. Admiral Chen, when the war is over and historians write about the Battle of Theranos Gate, make sure they understand something important. The Revenant's crew didn't do this because we were ordered to. We did it because it was right. Because some duties don't end with death, and some promises must be kept no matter the cost. That's what it means to be human. That's what we carry to the stars. Tell them we were here. Tell them we'll always be here, watching and fighting until every innocent life is safe. That's our legend. That's our choice, and we would make it again. Captain Sarah Volkov, UHSV Revenant, signing off. Chen saved the message to his personal files. Then he began drafting his official report of the battle. History needed to know what happened here. The galaxy needed to understand what humanity was capable of, and future generations needed to know about the ship that refused to stay dead, the crew that refused to stop fighting, and the captain who turned legend into reality. The Revenant was gone, phased back into whatever dimension it now called home, but it had left something behind. Hope. Proof that courage and duty could transcend time itself. That was worth more than any fleet. 6 months after the Battle of Theranos Gate, the war had changed completely. The Coalition forces pushed the Krell back on every front. Armed with the tactical data from the Revenant, human and alien commanders could predict enemy movements and exploit their weaknesses. Battles that would have been massacres became victories. Systems that would have fallen were defended. Admiral Chen stood in the Grand Assembly Hall on the Coalition capital world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from 50 species filled the chamber, gathered to discuss the future now that the Krell threat was finally contained. The aggressive empire had been pushed back to its original borders and was suing for peace. But Chen's mind was elsewhere. He thought about the Revenant often, wondering where the Phantom ship was and what battles it fought in the darkness between stars. A Velkari diplomat approached him after the session. Admiral Chen, I wanted to thank humanity personally. The courage you displayed at Theranos Gate inspired the entire Coalition, and the information from your legendary ship has saved millions of lives. The Revenant's crew deserves the credit, Chen said. They paid the price for that information. Indeed, the diplomat said. I have heard that human academies now teach the story of Captain Volkov. Is it true that recruits swear their oaths on a piece of her ship? Chen nodded. A hull plate from the original Revenant before it was lost. We recovered it from a museum and made it part of the ceremony. Every new officer places their hand on it and promises to never abandon their duty, just as Volkov never abandoned hers. The concept had spread beyond humanity. Torgathi warriors now invoked Volkov's name in battle. Velkari ships displayed the Revenant's profile on their banners. The Phantom ship had become a symbol for the entire Coalition, proof that legends could be real, and that courage could transcend death itself. Chen returned to Earth a week later. He had been ordered to oversee the dedication of a new memorial at Luna Station. The memorial would honor all those lost in the war, with a special section for the Revenant's crew. The ceremony was attended by thousands. Chen recognized many faces in the crowd, officers who had fought at Theranos Gate, family members of the Revenant's crew, and civilians who simply wanted to pay their respects to the legends who had saved them. When it was Chen's turn to speak, He stood before the memorial, a massive wall of black stone with 247 names engraved in silver. At the top, larger than the others, was Captain Sarah Volkov's name. "We are here," Chen began, "to remember those who gave everything." The crew of the UHSV Revenant made a choice 50 years ago that still echoes today. They chose duty over comfort, sacrifice over safety, and the future over their own present. He paused, looking at the faces of the descendants of the Revenant's crew. They stood in a special section wearing dress uniforms. Lieutenant Morrison was there, his great-grandmother's name shining on the wall. 18 other officers stood with him, each connected by blood to the Phantom ship. "These names represent something fundamental about humanity," Chen continued. "We do not quit. We do not give up. When faced with impossible odds, we find a way. And when death itself tries to stop us, we come back and fight anyway." The Revenant taught the galaxy what it means to be human. Captain Volkov and her crew showed every species that some promises are kept forever, that some duties never end, and that legends are just heroes who refuse to stop being heroic. Chen touched the memorial wall, his fingers tracing his grandfather's name. "To the crew of the Revenant, wherever you are, whatever battles you fight in the dark, know this: you are not forgotten, you will never be forgotten, and your legend will inspire humans for as long as we sail the stars." The crowd fell silent. Then as one, every human in attendance raised their right hand in salute. The gesture was followed by the alien attendees, each using their species equivalent. It was a moment of perfect unity, all of them honoring the ship that had become more than human, more than a vessel, more than a legend. That night, Chen was reviewing reports in his quarters when an alert flashed on his console. Deep space sensors had detected an anomaly in the Outer Veil region, near where the Revenant had originally disappeared. Chen opened the sensor data and felt his pulse quicken. The signature was familiar, a phase drive, flickering in and out of normal space. It remained for only 3 seconds before vanishing completely, but it was enough. A message came through, heavily encrypted. Chen decoded it and found a short video file. Captain Volkov appeared, looking even more worn than the last time Chen had seen her. Behind her, the Revenant's bridge showed signs of recent combat. Crew members moved in the background, their forms flickering and translucent. "Admiral Chen," Volkov said, "I'm sending this from deep in the Outer Veil. We found what the architects warned us about. There's something out here, something old and dangerous. It's been sleeping for millions of years, but it's starting to wake up." Her expression was serious, but not afraid. "We're going to stop it. That's our job now, fighting the things that sleep in the dark. We don't know if we'll succeed, but we're going to try. That's what the Revenant does. We try. Tell everyone back home not to worry about us," Volkov said, almost smiling. "We've been dead for 50 years anyway. What's a little more danger?" She stood, the camera following her. "I wanted you to know that we saw the memorial dedication. We can still access communication feeds, watch what's happening back home. It was beautiful. Thank you for remembering us. Marcus wanted me to tell you something," Volkov said. "Your grandfather says he's proud of you, and he's glad his sacrifice meant you got to live in a safer galaxy. He says to tell your family that he loves them, across time, across dimensions, forever." Chen found himself crying, not caring who might see. "This is probably the last message we'll send for a while," Volkov said. "The fight ahead is going to require all our attention, but we'll be back when you need us. That's a promise. The Revenant always keeps its promises." She saluted the camera. "Captain Sarah Volkov, UHSV Revenant, signing off. See you in the dark." The message ended. Chen sat in silence for a long time, then carefully archived the file. Future generations would want to see this, would want to know that the legends were still out there, still fighting. He stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, a ghost ship sailed between dimensions, crewed by people who had died 50 years ago, but refused to stop protecting the living. A year later, at the Coalition Military Academy, a new class of recruits stood in formation. They came from dozens of species, united in their desire to serve and protect. The ceremony master called them forward one by one to take their oaths. Each recruit placed their hand on the hull plate from the original Revenant. The metal was cold and scarred, a piece of history that had become sacred. The oath was simple. "I swear to serve with honor, to protect the innocent, and to never abandon my duty no matter the cost." "I swear this as Captain Volkov swore it," as the crew of the Revenant swore it, and as all who came before me swore it, I will stand in the dark so others may live in the light. The ceremony continued late into the night. When it finally ended, the instructor secured the hull plate in its case, ready for the next class and the next and the next, for as long as beings needed to remember what courage looked like. In the emptiness of deep space, beyond where any sensor could reach, a scarred ship flickered in and out of reality. Its crew worked in perfect synchronization, fighting a battle no one would ever see, protecting lives that would never know their names. The UHSV Revenant sailed on through dimensions, a phantom ship crewed by legends keeping promises that transcended death itself. And in the darkness, they would remain, watching, fighting, waiting for the day they were needed again, because some duties never end, some legends never die, and some ships never stop sailing no matter how far from home they travel, no matter how many years pass, no matter what. The Revenant would always be out there, always watching, always fighting, always.